Welcome to the Small Business Tax Savings Podcast, your weekly dose of accounting and tax tips specific to small business owners. You will be on your way to growing your business and paying the least amount in taxes as legally possible. Here's your host, Mike Jezoshek, CPA.
Hello and welcome back. Today's topic is hiring your spouse, business boost or bust. And specifically, we're going to be talking about the tax piece of hiring your spouse because in the world of small business, this idea of hiring your spouse might be appealing. It's something that comes up all the time, but there's some far reaching implications. There's some things we want to look at from a tax standpoint before we make this decision. Oftentimes, we see people jump to it or avoid hiring their spouse without thinking about that specific tax impact. And so today we're going to be talking about the tax advantages, the tax disadvantages of making a spouse part of your business. One thing we're not going to talk about is this idea of, from a relationship standpoint, should I hire my spouse or not? Because that's something that you can decide. But over here, we're talking about taxes. And so I want to start out with the first thing. There is absolutely no tax savings in putting your spouse on payroll and paying them wages, cash wages, direct deposit wages. There is no tax savings involved in that. And I think that's the first thing that we want to talk about because so many people get confused about that. If you hire your spouse in your business and you pay them cash wages or direct deposit wages, you're simply moving income from one area of your return to another. So you're getting a tax deduction from paying them wages, but now you're reporting that as income on the tax return that you guys do together. So they're just shifting income from one place to another. There's no tax advantage there. And in some cases, you're actually paying more tax than necessary because there might be self-employment tax and things like that that might not be necessary because of that paying. I mean, when I say self-employment tax, I mean FICA, Social Security, and Medicare. So when we talk about hiring your spouse, the true gold when hiring your spouse occurs when you pay them benefits and specifically tax-free employee benefits versus actual wages, versus actual cash wages. So this brings up the question, when should you hire your spouse? And there's kind of three main tax opportunities that we talk about where we would recommend hiring your spouse in your business. And that's retirement planning, health costs, and fringe benefits. So let's break each of those down and let's talk about them specifically. One of the main reasons we'd say let's hire our spouse is if you want to look to maximize your retirement contributions. So if you currently as a business owner are already maxing out your retirement contribution and you're looking to put even more away into retirement, hiring your spouse might be a great opportunity. You can hire your spouse, have them contribute to your business retirement plan as well as what you're already doing, and that can magnify the amount of money that you can put away towards retirement. But before we went down that road, I'd say first, max the retirement account as much as you can as the business owner. And then if we still want to do more, now this opens up the door for a great opportunity to hire your spouse. So let's go through a quick example. Let's imagine that you're an S Corp owner. You have a solo 401k in place. You have no other employees. You can max out the employee portion and the employer portion based on your salary. But that might not be enough of what you actually want to put away. So now we can hire our spouse. You could have them max out the employee portion and get the employer match as well, which would be a significant increase to that amount that you're putting away towards retirement. So there's potential that you could put away almost double, maybe less, but much more by hiring your spouse. So that's reason number one. Why would we hire our spouse? We want to max out retirement contributions. We're already maxing out our own, but we want to put more away to retirement. Let's utilize our spouse for that. The second biggest reason is when you have high health costs. And these would be health costs that are over and above insurance. So insurance is one thing, but you have costs, out of pocket costs over and above that. That's when hiring a spouse may be a great way to get a business deduction for those high health costs. And a while back when we did our healthcare series, we did a specific episode on this where we talked about the Section 105 or HRA plan. And so we talked about that a little bit more detail. I definitely recommend checking that out if you haven't already. The title of that blog, the title of that podcast episode video was What Options Are Available to Business Owners with High Medical Costs? And we kind of break down this idea even further. But in a nutshell, a Section 105 plan or an HRA plan is a way to turn personal medical expenses into a business deductions. Now, there's some qualifications that you have to do, but hiring your spouse is one way to do this. Now, if you have other employees, this would not be an option. If you operate as an S corporation, you'd have to do a workaround in order to accomplish this. But this is definitely a way that you can hire your spouse. If you have high medical costs, you can hire your spouse, get a business deduction for those healthcare costs that you're paying. And that would be part in the form of paying your spouse wages. So these can get a little bit more technical. They're fairly straightforward, but they are just a little complex on understanding at first. And you want to make sure that you do them right. You set them out right. You're doing everything right. So check out the article, the blog post, the podcast episode that we did on that. Again, it was titled, "What Options Are Available to Business Owners with High Medical Costs?" So that's reason number two that we'd hire a spouse. The third one is kind of just an added bonus. And this is the idea of fringe benefits. And with fringe benefits, let's talk about three main ones we like to talk about: life insurance, working condition benefits, and de minimis fringe benefits. Life insurance, businesses can provide their employees up to $50,000 in group term life insurance tax free. Great opportunity to do that. Working condition benefits. These would be things that help your spouse do their job. So think of things like a cell phone or a computer. Those costs would be deductions for your business, tax free to them for those items that your spouse would need to do their job that they're doing in your business. And then de minimis fringe benefits, these would be kind of low cost, $70 or less, and not frequent, but gifts that you give to your employees. So think of things like a holiday gift, a birthday gift, a performance gift. And this could be things like a meal or snack, flowers, fruit, similar items that you provide under special circumstances. So when it comes to hiring your spouse, we traditionally lean specifically on maximizing retirement and high health costs. We would not recommend fringe benefits being the sole reason you hire a spouse, if that was the only benefit that you could use. Then we'd instead say, have them as a board member, which you should probably be doing anyways, and takes advantage of some of those items as well. So those are the two main reasons. We don't hire our spouse to get a tax deduction for wages. If we pay our spouse wages, sure, we get a deduction in the business, but now we're just shifting that to taxes that we have to pay on that income that we're now receiving as W-2 wages. So we wouldn't hire our spouse for that reason. Not to mention that now we are potentially paying FICA taxes on that wages that we're paying, which creates even more tax than even necessary. So if your idea about, I want to hire my spouse because I just want to get a business deduction and I want to get some income over to them, we would not advise on doing that. The reasons that we'd say let's hire our spouse in our business is if you want to maximize retirement contributions or you have high out of pocket medical costs that you're looking to shift some of those expenses into a business deduction. Those are the two main reasons we would hire our spouse. So it comes to the question of, how do I support this idea of hiring my spouse? If I want to hire my spouse, what things do I need to put in place to support that deduction? And so if you hire your spouse, they have to be an actual employee of your business and you have to be paying them a reasonable rate. You can't just provide these benefits without your spouse actually earning it. You can't say, hey, we're going to cover medical costs for you, but you don't have to do anything. We're going to hire you in our business, but you're not going to do anything. We can't say we're going to maximize your retirement account, but you don't have to actually do any work. Your spouse has to be a bona fide employee of your business. So some items that you should be considering just to ensure that you're doing this right. Again, make sure the spouse does actual work. You're going to want to document exactly what your spouse is doing, how much time they're putting in, and we recommend typically having some sort of timesheet to have record, have proof of this. You want to make sure that you're paying them a reasonable rate, based on what your spouse was doing and the amount of hours and time that they're putting in. Is the amount that you're paying them for that reasonable? We want to make sure that we have documentation support to back that up. We have to make sure your spouse is actually getting paid. So if you're utilizing hiring your spouse strategy for health related costs, you want to ensure that your spouse is paying for the health costs. And then based on that Section 105 plan or that HRA plan that you have in place, you are reimbursing your spouse for those health costs. And that's where the deduction comes in. And one other main item is that your spouse is not an owner. If you're operating your business as a sole proprietorship, single member LLC, or partnership, you want to ensure that your spouse is not an owner if you're hiring them, because in those entities, you can't pay W-2 payroll to an owner. So when we look at this idea, hiring a spouse can lead to great tax savings in certain situations. But you want to first understand, does it make sense in my situation? Am I just hiring them to hire them? Am I just hiring them to get a business deduction? Or am I hiring them for the reasons it makes sense? Maximizing retirement contributions, or if I have high medical costs. When we talk about high medical costs, typically we're saying $4,000 or $5,000 out of pocket over and above insurance per year is when that starts to make sense. So we want to make sure, does this make sense in my situation? If it does, then we want to make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's and do things the right way to help defend and make sure that we are protected from this. So let's talk about some disadvantages. What are some disadvantages of hiring your spouse? Number one, increased payroll taxes. Hiring a spouse could increase your payroll taxes. This is that FICA, Social Security, Medicare, possibly unemployment taxes that could be taxable to their wages. Now, if you're paying them with tax-free employee benefits, this is often not a downside. It doesn't come into play. But from a retirement planning opportunity, the tax savings are definitely traditionally going to outweigh these added payroll tax costs, but that's something we want to consider. And if we're just paying our spouse wages, this is the big kicker. Again, we're getting a business deduction, so that's lowering our taxable income. But now we're paying Social Security and Medicare on the employer side. Our spouse is paying Social Security and Medicare on the employee side. And that income that we paid them, we still have to pay taxes on our personal tax return. So it's creating more tax than necessary unless we're doing it for the right reasons. And, as well as a disadvantage is potential audit risk. As with all tax strategies, we just need to make sure that we're doing it right. And this audit risk is just this idea of make sure you have the supporting documents, make sure that you're paying them a reasonable rate, you're tracking the time that they're putting in, and they're actually doing work for your business. Paying a salary that's disproportionately high could attract some unwanted attention to the IRS. So the decision to hire a spouse shouldn't be taken lightly. It's important to understand the tax implications and how they fit into your overall business strategy. Generally stating, again, I want to drill this home. Simply hiring your spouse and paying them wages, cash wages, gives you no tax advantages and could actually cost you more in taxes. But there are two main reasons on when we would recommend hiring your spouse. Again, maximize retirement contributions, or if you have high health costs over and above your insurance. So hiring your spouse in your business can offer some notable tax advantages, but if you do it for the wrong reasons, it could also cost you more in taxes. Do not get into that trap of thinking that paying your spouse wages decreases business income and saves you taxes. So that is what we want to drill home. That's what we want to talk about in this idea is, okay, when would we hire a spouse? Because we get it all the time from people in our free Facebook group, from people in our tax minimization program. We get people contact us all the time. Should I hire my spouse in my business? And we don't want them to get in that trap of thinking, oh, this is a business deduction, so that's why we're going to hire our spouse, when they forget that it's a business deduction, but now it's income. So hopefully that was helpful. Again, when we talk about hiring your spouse, there's so many different other areas that come into play. Running a business as a couple, as a married couple, can be difficult. It has its advantages and has its disadvantages. Those are things you want to go through. Those are things you want to talk about with your spouse prior to making this opportunity and putting this in place. But what I wanted to talk to you about was those tax strategies, the tax savings. How does hiring your spouse turn into a tax strategy? And hopefully that's what we covered today. So I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to us. And again, if you haven't checked out our episode specifically on that high medical costs, just go into our podcast, go into YouTube, go into our blog, and type in what options are available to business owners with high medical costs. You can find us at taxsavingspodcast.com. As well as if you're not in our free Facebook group, make sure you join now. Just go into Facebook, type in Small Business Tax Secrets, and join that group there. It's a free group to join, and you can ask your questions away. So again, thank you for listening. Thanks for seeing me on this episode, and I will see you next week.
This has been another episode of the Small Business Tax Savings Podcast. If you enjoy our weekly episodes, please leave a review and share with other business owners. You can find previous episodes and more information at www.taxsavingspodcast.com. Thanks for listening and have a great day.